Welcome back to the Philo Landlord Guy. I'm your host, Yuri Skripnichenko, licensed real estate broker and certified property manager here in Philadelphia. A year ago, we sat down with Rachel to talk about the basics, how to get your Philadelphia rental license, dealing with the commercial activity license, and getting your first let cert. If you haven't heard that one, go back and listen to an episode that was posted in April 2025. But today we're doing a critical update. Getting the license is one thing, keeping it is another. Lately, the city has been getting much more aggressive with not renewals. If your license is revoked, you can't legally collect rent and you definitely cannot file for an eviction. Today, Rachel is back to talk to us through the not renewal trap. We're focusing on maintenance side of compliance, how outstanding LNI violations and expiring let certificates can trigger a shutdown of the rental license. Hi, Rachel. Welcome back to our show. Nice to have you here again. For those who do not know you, tell us a little bit more about yourself, what you do, and what is it that you can tell us today.
Hi, Yuri. Thank you so much for having me back. I'm excited to be on the podcast today. My background is that I run Philly Rental License. I am an expediter licensed by the city of Philadelphia, and I specialize in landlord compliance. So that'll include your rental license, as well as the commercial activity license, certificate of rental suitability, Philadelphia tax account, annual renewals, and all kinds of issues that come along with it. Prior to this, I worked in property management. So I used to manage over 100 units here in Philadelphia, a range of single family, multifamily, commercial, and industrial, and PHA Section 8. So I have a lot of knowledge and experience when it comes to what landlords in Philadelphia are going through, combating with the city, keeping tenants happy, and everything that comes with it. So I brought that knowledge over when I started Philly Rental License, and I have been doing this full time for a few years now. So helping landlords every day with their compliance and navigating the city.
For those who didn't listen to our previous episode that we recorded about a year ago, that was the most viewed episode on YouTube and also the most listened episode on other online platforms, which makes me think that the topic that we discussed, the rental license in Philly, it's something that affects a lot of landlords and a lot of people may have questions or do not know what to do and how to proceed with it. And last time we were talking about how to apply for rental license or why do you need to have rental license. And again, for somebody who's looking for that information, just go back and look for that episode. Now I have a rental license. Now I know how to apply for it. But now let's keep this rental license. It's not a one-time thing that I apply it one time and I have it and I forget about it. It's a yearly renewal that you have to do with the city of Philadelphia. Today, I want to talk to you about what happens if the landlord in Philadelphia lets their rental license.
So, a few things happen when your rental license lapses. The first thing is that it will begin to accrue a monthly penalty. This is a silent killer. There are so many landlords out there that don't realize that when their license lapsed, maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, even 1 year ago, it immediately starts to accrue a monthly penalty. And I have had landlords pay thousands of dollars in penalties to get their license back. There is no way around it. You have to pay the penalty to move forward and to get your license reissued. So the biggest killer is going to be those penalties. After that, also, your tenant is no longer obligated to keep paying rent. If your tenant learns that your rental license has expired, they can start putting the rent in escrow and they are not obligated to pay landlord rent who does not have a rental license that's active. The other thing that you cannot do is file for an eviction. So if you have a tenant that's not paying rent, you will not be allowed to go file the eviction in the court. You have to show proof of an active rental license. So those are three of the main things. You're going to accrue penalties, your tenant is not obligated to pay rent, and you cannot file an eviction in court.
So when you go to file for eviction to a landlord tenant court and feel like, can the judge or whoever is taking your paperwork look up right on the spot if you have rental license or if it's active or if it was lapsed or it was
Mhm.
revoked?
That's a great question. And the answer to that is anyone can look up your rental license on the spot. So whether that's a judge or your own tenants, that is public records. So if you have an expired rental license, that is public record that your judge can look up, your tenant can look up. That's always going to be available right away from the date that it expires or it lapses. They will see whether or not it's active and they will know whether or not they're going to take your court case.
So, what would you recommend to landlords? How do they protect yourself from not having rental license renewed, or how often do they need to check on the status of rental license?
The rental license is going to always expire on the same anniversary date. What that means is that your license is always going to expire on that same anniversary date. Let's say your rental license expires February 28th of every year, but you don't renew your license until April 1st or June 15th. It will still expire February 28th of that following year. So the best thing is to keep track of your expiration dates because they won't change. Or if you work with myself, I track all of my clients' rental license expiration dates for them. And I send out an automatic reminder 45, 30, 15, 5, and 0 days in advance of your expiration date, making sure that we do not miss that deadline.
So, can you renew your rental license before it expires?
You can renew your rental license 45 days before it expires. And I definitely recommend that you are renewing your license before it expires because you never know what kind of issue could come up and you need to give yourself time to work through it before the license expires. And you'll still have that same anniversary expiration date. So if you renew your license 45 days in advance, you're not going to lose out on 45 days that you had already paid the city to be covered. So I definitely urge you to renew licenses early. Your license expiration date will still expire the same date the following year. And this way, it gives you that wiggle room that you need to work through anything that could delay the license.
What kind of problems you see when you trying to renew a license and you cannot for whatever reason?
I would say there's 3 main problems I will come across when it comes to renewals. The first is if your property has some sort of violation. If you have a violation issued by the city for some sort of safety concern or trash or anything that could come across their desk, they will withhold you from renewing your rental license until that's resolved.
Before we get into the specifics of LNI violations, I want to take a quick second to thank our sponsor, TrustArt Realty. As we're discussing today, Philadelphia compliance is a moving target. If you're a landlord and you're feeling overwhelmed by LNI notices or renewals, you don't have to handle it alone. TrustArt Realty is a full-service property management company right here in Philly that specializes in keeping owners compliant and profitable. They are offering to all of our listeners a free rental analysis or management advice session. To claim your free session, just send an email to trustartrealty@phillylandlordguy.com or click the link in the show notes to fill a quick form and somebody from the team will reach out to help you.
The second one is going to be the lead-based paint. So the city requires that if your property was built before 1978, it has to be tested for lead-based paint. The lead results are valid for 4 years. Don't ask me why. I don't know why they chose 4 years, but it's good for 4 years. The city rolled this requirement out about 4 years ago, so we're seeing a lot of properties are starting to lapse and need to get retested now. The city has record of that and it's connected to your license. So if your property either doesn't have lead results on file or if your lead results have expired, when you go to renew the rental license, it will flag you for that as well. And then the third most common is if you have a tax clearance issue. So, especially right now, taxes are starting to be due for the previous tax year. So, we're seeing a lot of people are getting flagged because they have to file their returns with the city for the business income and receipts tax, for the net profit tax. The 3 main reasons are going to be open violations, lead based paint, and tax clearance issues.
Can it be revoked for any of those reasons? Or if you already have a license, it will just expire on the day when it's scheduled to expire.
When it comes to lead and tax issues, currently we're seeing that it will just come to light when you go to renew the license next year. Violations, that can definitely cause a wrench in things. It's a really great question. It's not black or white because at the end of the day, the city can do what they want. So if they feel that they have a valid reason to revoke your rental license, they can do that. It's not something I see happen often. It usually is something that just comes to light when we're trying to renew the license next year and it's not letting us get the license renewed. But I wouldn't put it past them if they feel that they have a good reason to revoke an active license. There's no reason why they can't do that if they feel that they're entitled to.
And on the other note here was lead certificate. Even if your rental license is still active, but lead certificate expires during the time when you have rental license and you need to go file for eviction, you still won't be able to do that. You still need to have your lead certificate. And
Yeah,
this is annoying and you have to have it a new one every 4 years.
yeah.
This is the way how the business is run in Philly. And what happens if, let's say, your lead certificate expiring and you need to renew your rental license and tenants are not allowing you in the property to do testing?
That's a great question because this kind of becomes like a chicken before the egg, like which one comes first, right? Because in order to get the rental license, you have to get in to do the lead testing. But how can you get a rental license if the tenant's not letting you in for lead testing? And then ultimately, how could you file an eviction? So there is a solution for this. If you have a tenant that is not allowing entry into the property, a lead inspector can go through a process where they show effort and attempt to access the property. And if they cannot get into the property, you can provide this to the lead department and they will grant you a temporary exemption. So I don't know the exact timeline of how long that gives you, but it might be somewhere between 1 to 3 months of a window where they allow you to get your rental license and get the temporary exemption, and then what you'll find is when you go to renew the license the following year, that will have expired and they'll need you to test the property, but I would definitely recommend as soon as you can get access to the property, and if you have it someone living there, to get it tested for lead, because maintaining the lead results and keeping that active is definitely going to be very important. If you ever end up in court, the city's going to ask for that. And if they realize that your lead results are expired, it can, depending on the judge, they can decide that's it. You're going home that day. There's nothing more we can do on the case. Come back when you have lead results. So it's just so important to always have your T's crossed and your I's dotted when you're dealing with the city because it's up to the person looking at your case at the end of the day.
What kind of proof required that you try to obtain the lead certificate or that you're trying to gain access to the property? Is it some video, photo, or letter?
It's typically a few documents. So it will be written correspondence that you've attempted to contact the tenant. That could be by text. Usually it's also by taking a photo of a letter that the lead inspector will post to the door saying, I'm trying to access the property for lead inspection. This is my number. Please contact me. They also recommend that you send a letter via certified mail and that you have proof that you sent the letter that you're trying to access the property. So usually it is the written correspondence with the tenant proving that you're trying to access the property, along with photos. A lot of the time, the lead inspector may take a photo of themselves knocking on the door with their company t-shirt showing so and so lead inspector is trying to knock on the door so that they can see a photo with the house number and then proof that they also left a letter posted to the door that they tried to access the property. So you bundle all this different proof together and email it to the lead department. And from there, they will review it and they usually will issue you the lead exemption for a temporary period of time.
Do you know how long that process takes after you email it to the lead department and until they review it and get back to you?
I would say on average between 5 to 7 business days.
And is it something that you helping landlords as well, or they have to do it themselves?
I always help my clients with it. I'm usually the one that actually does the email to the city for them. So I know how to structure the email, put it together for them. I'll CC them on it, and then I will send it off to the lead department and follow up until we get our way and they issue the exemption.
What are the most common L&I violations that you see when you're trying to renew your license and you cannot?
So when it comes to L&I violations, that is a really wide range. That can be anything from maybe you had a tenant call L&I because they had a leak and the leak made the ceiling collapse and now they have this issue so they called L&I, or it could be because there was a trash violation. It could be really anything under the sun when it comes to L&I violations. But once that violation is in the system, it will prevent you from getting the license. It's just really important to always look out for those violation notices. If you get a violation notice in the mail, you usually get a grace period of time that you can correct it before there's penalties and before they start to have repercussions. So make sure when you get a violation, handle it right away. There is usually an inspector's name and email or phone number on the violation, so you can reach out to the person that issued it and try to get that rectified as soon as possible.
And what happens if you do not take care of that violation? Right. We have a lot of clients, or at least I spoke to a lot of people who say that they have violation, but that they never received any notice. And they found out only at the time when they went to renew the rental license.
So when it comes to a violation, I completely hear you on that part. I never got the violation. I didn't know I had a violation. Unfortunately, it's not fair, but the city's still going to stand by their violation. You're still responsible for correcting the violation. I would definitely make sure that you're keeping your address up to date on file with the city. So that would be your commercial activity license address, your rental license address, your Philadelphia Department of Revenue address. It's really important that you're keeping those addresses updated because that's where they're going to mail it to. And it's on you as the landlord. You're responsible for making sure that the city has the right address on file. Once you do learn of a violation, whether it be through the mail or because you're trying to renew your rental license, you have to correct it. This could be a violation from 5 years ago. It could be a violation from 1 month ago. So you have to read through the violation. It will have it listed out what's causing the problem, correct the issue, and then you have to schedule the reinspection. So that's either by calling the number on the form or emailing the inspector that should be listed on the form as well. So you have to rectify the violation. Sometimes there's a penalty involved. So you have to pay for the fee for the penalty. Sometimes, if a violation has gone on long enough, it will go to court. So if it goes to court, you do have to follow through the court procedures in order to rectify it. You can't just fix it, call the inspector, and make it go away. At that point, you do have to go through the court proceedings. And if you get a violation that has gone to court and you don't know what to do next, my recommendation would be to call the number on the violation and let them know that you are trying to get in touch with the court hearing and to learn more about what you have to do next as the landlord. And they should be able to give you direction from there on who to call and how to get some more information about your court hearing.
So if that happens, until you clear out all of those violations and judgments or whatever court may have against you, you will not be able to renew your rental license.
That's correct. So it's so important that you are handling that as it comes because the next thing you know, you're dealing with the city for a violation and your tenant stops paying rent. And these violations in general, whether it goes to court or not, it can take a while to rectify. Just getting the inspector to come back out to the property, that can take time. You're working around their schedule, you're communicating with them. They're not always the fastest to get back to people and to be available. So it is so important that if a violation comes in, you take care of it right away because it's really stressful as a landlord when you have a tenant that's not paying rent and you're at the mercy of the city trying to clear these violations. And the months can just start stacking up where they're not paying rent and you're still in violation. And it can feel like you're stuck. But the only way out is by clearing those violations. So you have to make sure that they're getting handled as they come in. And if you didn't realize that you had one, the only way out is through and by correcting it and getting the property reinspected.
Is there any exception similar to the let certificate if your tenant is not letting in you to do the repairs and you physically cannot correct the violation?
No, I haven't personally seen the city waive any violations due to that. At the end of the day, if you are the landlord and you are the owner of the property, you have the right to enter the property as long as you're giving the proper amount of notice. That's really a gray space. It is really difficult, especially if you have a tenant that you fear could cause bodily injury or harm to you or whoever you're sending there. You have to be really careful. And if you're at a point where you do have a very genuine concern that the tenant could be unsafe, you need to talk to the inspector and let them know and show them proof that you're trying to get in. And at the end of the day, it's going to be between you and the inspector, where if you can show proof that this person truly is not allowing you inside and that it's unsafe to try to enter the unit, I would definitely urge you to speak with the inspector and try your best to get them to understand the situation and to see what options they can present for you.
So if a tenant calls 311 to report some minor issue or repair or maintenance that needs to be done to the property, does that automatically put your rental license at risk?
Yes, it will definitely put your rental license at risk. There's a process. So someone calls 311, that will trigger an inspector to come out to the property. So they'll come out to the property, and if they find something is in violation, they'll issue the violation notice. And then that when the timer starts ticking, where once a violation gets issued, they give you usually a period of time to correct the violation. If that period of time passes and you haven't corrected it, that's when you'll usually start to owe fees for the violation, and your rental license will definitely be at risk at that point. I have not yet seen it happen where a violation revoked an active rental license, but when your renewal does come around, if you have a property in violation, you won't be able to renew the license. When it comes to violations, at the end of the day, if someone gets a violation, they have to fix it. It's going to stop their license, they're going to owe fees.
Can you walk us through what happens after you had a violation, you fixed it, violation was taken care of? How do you get that cleared out of your Eclipse portal? How do you go ahead and renew your rental license? Is there a specific step that you need to do, or it will happen automatically and you just need to wait?
So once the violation gets closed, it should, after processes, allow you to move forward with the renewal. Sometimes when a violation closes, there's then still a penalty owed. So you have to wait for the violation to close. And then you can also pay the penalty. And once that processes, you should at that point be able to move forward. If for some reason the property was re-inspected and it passed, but that violation isn't getting closed, that's where you'll want to keep following up with the inspector and the inspection's office to remind them that it needs to be closed out. And eventually they will close it so that you can move forward with the license. But once that violation is closed and you can see it through the city's systems that it's marked as closed, it should no longer prevent you from getting the rental license.
So when you go to renew your rental license in your Eclipse portal, does it tell you that, hey, Rachel, you cannot renew this rental license because this property has a violation, trash violation, or whatever violation? Or how do you know what is the problem?
So when you go to renew the license, it will pop up and prevent you from doing it, letting you know that there is a violation. It will not tell you what the violation is. From there, I would urge you to go to the Atlas website and you can put your address in, and that will show you a list of any open violations against your property. So it is like a two-step system. They'll only let you know that you're being flagged for a violation. They won't tell you what the violation is. So that's your responsibility to go look on the city systems to see what violations are being held against your property.
And I assume it's the same for tax. If you have some kind of tax clearance, it will tell you that you have a tax problem.
Exactly. It'll say there's a tax problem. They won't tell you what. They won't tell you why. They'll just tell you that there's a tax problem. And then it's your responsibility to find out what's causing the issue. For people that work with me, this is always part of my service where I walk you through, okay, how do we find out what's causing the tax issue? What is the issue? How do we resolve the issue? Whether that be for tax, violations, lead, I'm always taking the next step to find out what is causing the problem and how do we fix the problem. But it's always going to be on the landlord to find out what it is. The city kind of just gives you a little blurb of what's causing the problem, and then it's your responsibility to dig deeper and resolve it.
So if you have LNI violation, you go to Atlas. If you have a tax problem, where do you go? How do you find out what is the problem?
If you have a tax problem, you're going to go to tax-services.phila.gov, or you can also just Google Philadelphia Department of Revenue tax portal. And there is a website that you can log into your Philadelphia tax account and see what's causing the issues on your account.
So it will tell you that you have overdue tax or something is not filed.
Yes, through the Philadelphia tax portal, you can see if you have missing returns that have to be filed, if you have a balance that's owed, it will tell you what's causing the flag.
Rachel, since last time we spoke, have there been any changes in the process for rental license, how you apply to it, how you renew it, or anything that's concerning rental license?
So the process itself is still very much the same. What I will say is that the city is just getting more and more involved with connecting different types of areas of the city into the rental license to see if there's something causing a flag. So we've already talked about the taxes, we talked about lead, we talked about violations. Something that they'll do is a lot of time now, they're not automatically renewing the license. They're actually reviewing the application. So once you submit a renewal, they will review it and then they sometimes come back to me with questions or issues like mailing address issues, or if it's a owner occupied non-rental, they'll want to see an updated affidavit of non-rental, which is just a document where the landlord verifies that they live in a unit that does not earn an income. So I would just say that they're definitely trying to get more hands-on when it comes to the rental license process. They are trying to review more applications themselves rather than automatically letting the license renewed once you push the application through. And they are also in the pipeline, I've heard, going to try to start incorporating virtual inspections. The city is incorporating virtual inspections for short-term licenses, often referred to as the Airbnb license. So when you are approved to rent your property short-term, that is for a rental that's 30 days or less, they will have a virtual inspection where you have to essentially join a Zoom call and the inspector will ask you to go around the apartment, look at different things, and they determine if it passes the inspection, and then they'll issue the short-term license. This is a soft launch because it's something that they are definitely going to hope to roll out to the grander scheme to rental licenses as a whole. So that's something that maybe within the next few years we could see start to come into play.
I hope it will not, but as we speak, they actually have City Hall hearing tomorrow on the specific, or one of the hearings that they have tomorrow on the specific problem. They're trying to put inspections on every rental property in City of Philadelphia. It doesn't matter if it's short term or long term. But it's interesting. I don't really deal with short term rentals in Philly. Can you tell a little bit more about those Airbnb rental licenses? Is anybody allowed to go and get one, or do you have to have any specific approval for that? How does that work?
So, getting a rental license for short term approved in Philly is pretty strict. There's two types of short term licenses. One is when it's your home and you say to the city, "This is my home, this is where I live, and I'm looking to rent my home short term for the time I'm not there." And then there is just your average rental investment property where you are just looking at it as a business and you don't live there and you just want to rent it short term. So when it comes to the type of rental license where the owner lives there, depending on your zoning, by most often you are allowed to have this type of rental license, an owner occupied property that they would like to rent short term. That's easier to get done. That's not as often. A lot of people that come to me looking for a short term rental license, they're investors. They would like to start expanding their portfolio to have short term rentals as purely investment properties. That is very hard to get the city to approve. Most often, you have to go through the process first to get a zoning permit for change of use for a variance to do short term rentals. And this is something that most neighborhoods, they don't want that. They don't want their neighborhoods getting overran by people that are only there for short term. They want to have long-term residents. So the city really is not favorable to it, and it is really hard to get this type of license issued and approved. I don't see it happen very often. So when I have a client come to me looking to do that, I urge them that you have to go down the road, you have to apply for the permit. You're not guaranteed it's going to happen. So you need to be prepared in case of plan B, which would be maybe renting it long term instead. But I urge people don't go buy a property thinking you're just going to lease it out on Airbnb and this, that, and the third without also knowing that plan B might be that you have to just do a traditional rental, which would be 30 days, more than 30 days at a time.
What are the problems here if you do not have rental license for short-term rentals? For regular rentals, we understand you're gonna evict anyone. That's the problem number one, and you legally are not allowed to collect rent without it. What does it give you with short-term rentals?
So, one of the big things with the short term rentals are the host websites like Airbnb or Verbo. They do ask for this license. And a lot of times I have people coming to me because they tell me I keep getting my Airbnb shut down because I don't have the license. So oftentimes you might get by for a little bit, but most often it will catch up to you that you're getting kicked off the rental website like Airbnb because you don't have the license. So I have a lot of people coming to me flustered because they were supposed to have bookings and now they're being booted off the website. So one thing is that they won't take you on and they won't allow you to keep renting without it. The other thing is that if you have someone come into the property and for some reason maybe they don't leave, if you don't have the proper licensing in place and you have to go to court, that can of course just cause a lot of headaches and issues as you're trying to navigate through there as well.
Is the price for this rental license the same as for regular license or it's different?
So the city does charge more for this type of license. The exact number I don't have off the top of my head. The city charges $69 per unit to issue a regular rental license. And I want to say for short term, it's about 150 or so or 175 to have that type of license issued. And then that's also valid for a year and it has to be renewed annually.
And you, I assume, still have to have a lead certificate for that as well.
Yes, but still has to be tested for lead-based paint.
Have you ever had to do this Zoom inspection for this short-term licenses? If you have, can you tell us about how do they go? What they look for? I would be very curious to see how they happen and if they're planning on expand it to everyone, how the city will be able to do that with the amount of rental properties that we have in the market.
I have not personally done the Zoom inspection, but I've had clients who have, and they tell me a little bit about what that process was like. So, what I've heard is that oftentimes you join the Zoom call, the inspector, they'll ask you to show them around certain areas of the apartment. Of course, every inspector is going to have different things that they're looking for. So, let's say this is the sort of rental license where you say, oh, I'm the owner, I live here, and I want to rent short term. They might ask to show inside the closets. Maybe they wanna see that the property's set up and ready to be an Airbnb, so they might wanna see, like, the bedrooms, if there's beds. Maybe they wanna see in the kitchen that you have cutlery and plates. So, they're just going to wanna see around the apartment, and then they, of course, are probably checking to see how many bedrooms you have. They're probably checking to see the safety of the property. They might wanna see your smoke detectors or carbon monoxide detectors, things like that.
I definitely hope that this is not going to pass and we will not have to deal with it for regular rentals because I cannot even imagine how long it will take to get the inspection done to just to be able to rent your property. Last time we spoke, you mentioned about 3-year rule for an active rental license and how that affects zoning or use of a property. So if I have a duplex with active rental license, but it's in a single family zoning, and then for whatever reason, my license lapsed or I do not renew it for 3 years. Why is it critical to know about it? And what do I need to know and how that may affect my property in the future?
Yes, this is a conversation I have with people probably at least once a week where a lot of people, when they're buying a property, they look on Atlas or other areas of the city that have zoning information, and they will see that they're in a certain zoning district, like RM1. And they say, oh, I'm multifamily because my zoning district is RM1 and I'm buying this duplex. So I'm all set. I'm all good. That's not the case. So your zoning district is what your area is allowed to be by right. That does not mean that your property has actually gone through the zoning change to be that use. So the city might have your property registered as single family. And even though you're in a zoning district that's multifamily, you are still responsible for getting a change of use permit to become that use. And then you, from there, would need building permits and other sort of documentation to prove to the city that you are a safe property to be occupied to get a certificate of occupancy ultimately. So if you have a property, a great way to prove the zoning is look at previous rental licenses, especially if your rental license was issued within the last 3 years, whether it was your license or from a previous owner. If it was issued in the last 3 years and it has the number of units on there, the city will allow you to use that right off the bat for your proof of zoning. After it's been expired for more than 3 years, that's where they start to have other things that they require to prove the zoning for the property. But if you have a rental license within 3 years that says the number of units is two, three, four, or five, whatever, that's like a golden ticket that the city will accept to issue you a new license if it's a property that you just bought for that same number of units. But a lot of time, I even have it happen where maybe someone bought a duplex and the last license on history was for 1 unit. So it becomes a real big headache and it's a problem where we have to take every trick out of our sleeve and see what we can do to get that zoning updated without opening a can of worms.
What happens when you buy a duplex and say it's in a regular RSA 5 or whatever single family zoning, but that they physically it's a duplex, they have two gas meters, two electric meters, they have separate apartments, and that they had rental license, say 6 years ago for 2 units. What would you do? Do you still have to go through zoning? Do you still have to get a use and occupancy, or you can just go and renew your license?
So if I have someone come to me that needs to get a rental license and the last license on history was greater than 3 years ago, but it has that number of units that we're looking for, it says it was for 2 units. What I would do is I would pair that with the affidavit of continuous use and submit it to the city. An affidavit of continuous use is where, as the owner, you verify that to your knowledge, the zoning has not changed since the last time it was approved and you submit it to the city. Now, it's not really in the wheelhouse of the list of required forms that they give you that you can submit zoning through. So I can't guarantee that they'll always accept it. But when I've done it for my clients, I've had really good success rates where I will take the most recent proof of zoning we have on file, pair it with a notarized affidavit of continuous use, and then together they usually do accept that.
Is there anything else that I didn't ask you about rental license renewals or red flags that you may have during the renewal period you need to share?
So often I have people come to me telling me, oh, I forgot, or I dropped the ball, or I didn't know it had to be renewed, or the city didn't notify me it had to be renewed. At the end of the day, it is the landlord's responsibility to renew their rental license. The city is not a babysitter by any means. They're not really even your friend by any means. They put the responsibility solely on you. So if it's been 20 years, 5 years, 1 year, the city won't just issue a new license unless the ownership has changed. If the ownership of the property is still the same, you have to renew the license that was on file with them before. You can't get a new one. And to bring that license up to date, there are penalties. And I really have had clients pay over $10,000 just to get this back to active. And my biggest stressor is don't keep pushing it off, don't keep avoiding it. Sometimes people know that they have to renew it and they just keep waiting and waiting. But like I said, it's a monthly penalty. So the longer you wait, the more it's going to accrue, especially if it's multifamily. The charges can really add up. So my biggest tip is to always renew your license. A lot of people don't know that once the license gets issued the first time, it has to get renewed. It's fully the landlord's responsibility. So that's on them to renew it. And renewals, it's like going to the doctor. Like you have to keep up the health of the license. So, you can't just do it once and forget about it. You can't go to the doctor once and think you're good for life. It's the same thing with the license. Every year it needs its annual renewal. And if you keep up to date with that, you're going to be in really good shape as a landlord and you're definitely going to help protect yourself long term.
What happens if I was renting out my property, let's say for 5 years, I had rental license, and now I decide to move back in? Do I just let it go and it will not be renewed and I forget about it? Or do I have to take some steps to stop that rental license?
That's a great question. If you are renting your property out and then you decide you'd like to move back in, maybe, or you want to have a family member move in and you know that there's not going to be a rent collected. A couple of things. If you have someone living there without collecting rent, like a family member, you still need to maintain an active rental license. It's very important that you still have a rental license. If you are personally moving back into your property and it will no longer be a rental, you must close the license. I have it happen where someone will tell me, "Oh, I moved in and I was living there for 5 years and now I'm ready to rent it again." The city will still require that you pay all those penalties for the time that you lived in your own property and you did not renew or close the license. So, what you can do is if you have an active rental license and now you realize you're not going to need a license anymore, close it. It's very easy to do. And then when you are ready to reopen it, we'll get you a new license and then you're good to go from there. The worst thing you can do is leave your license alone and let it expire. Do not let your license expire. It really adds up and it can be such a headache. Something else that we didn't talk about is if you had an active rental license and it expired and your tenant stopped paying rent, that's that. You could have had that license active for 5 years, but if they stopped paying rent and your license is expired and you go to court to file, it doesn't matter how long you were in compliance with the city. You have to have an active license dated for the time that they were not paying rent in order to be allowed to file for back rent owed.
And when I sell a property, let's say I'm a landlord, I have active rental license and I sell my property, do I need to close that rental license? Or in this case, since the property will not longer be in my name, it's not a problem if I just let it be.
Yes, the owner is still responsible for closing the license. If you sell the property, you should close the license. That's always my recommendation to a client whenever they tell me they're selling. I always urge them to close it and I offer to close it for them as well.
And what does it entail? Like, how do you close a rental license?
We close a license by amending it. We submit an amendment to the city explaining to them that the property is being sold. Sometimes that might include uploading the proof of sale to show them that this property is no longer owned and it should be closed.
Is it something that you do through Eclipse as well, or it's a separate?
Anything rental license related is going to be through Eclipse.
Rachel, if I had just one question for you, and you would give me one maintenance hack for landlords to ensure that they never get a problem with their rental license, what would that be?
That's my biggest hack, my biggest piece of advice. Don't wait until the license expires to renew it. Don't wait a day before the license is expiring to renew it. Start renewing your license at that 45-day window when they open it to you, because that will give you the time that you need to work through any issues. 45 days is plenty of time to figure out what's causing the problem and to avoid your license from expiring. So it's not so much a hack, it's not so much a trick. It's just you have to be on top of your timing. You have to know when that license is coming up for renewal. And my biggest hack is to start early.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for joining us today. And again, for all the wealth of information that you share with the landlords. I'm sure there are a lot of people who would find this useful and actionable and will figure out how to renew the rental license.
I think we talked about a lot of really important topics when it comes to the rental license. I know from the last episode, I had so many people reaching out to me with questions. So if you're listening to this episode and you'd like to talk more about it, please reach out to me. I'm more than happy to talk through your registration, your renewal, and help. And thank you so much, Yuri, for having me on the show again. I can't believe it's been almost a year since we last did this
Yeah.
episode. I talk about this all day long. So sometimes when I sit down and I actually talk to an audience about it, there's so many things that to me, I just know off the top of my head, but it's really helpful information to people that are not privy to this already. So I'm really glad that we could talk about it and do some deep diving into these issues.
What would be the best way for someone to reach out to you if they have any questions?
So the best way to reach out to me, you can email me. My email is info@phillyrentallicense.com. Or you can call me 267-310-1834.
Sounds good. And we will drop it in the show notes as well. If you need to reach out to Rachel, you can find her information down there.
Thank you so much, Yuri.
Thank you, Rachel. See you next time. That wraps up our compliance update for today. The big takeaway here is simple. Don't wait for a notice to intend to revoke or to not renew your rental license hitting your mailbox. Be proactive, check the LNI portal regularly, and never let that 4-year lot certificate expire. I want to thank Rachel for coming back on and giving us the straight talk on what's happening at City Hall. If you found this episode helpful, please do us a favor, rate the show, like it, share it, leave a review. And the more we share this info, the better our local industry becomes. If you have a specific questions about your rental license or need that free rental analysis we mentioned, email us at trustartrealty@phillylandlordguy.com. Do not forget to follow us. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next episode.